What's up, guys, and welcome to the weekly Q&A. Our first question this week comes from Josh Peters, who asks when Obi-Wan found out Anakin was Darth Vader. Well, he finds out in Revenge of the Sith when he sees that hologram, but I think you're actually asking, when did Obi-Wan find out that Vader survived Mustafar? In Star Wars Legends, he finds out shortly after Episode 3, he just overhears it in a cantina on the HoloNet. We don't have a version of that story in the canon yet, and I agree with you that I think it would make a very interesting plot point for the as-of-yet unconfirmed Kenobi movie that I think is totally going to happen. Jack Barnes wants to know if Luke saw the destruction of Hosnian Prime from Ahch-To. I'm gonna guess that no, he didn't see it because he seemed pretty oblivious to everything when Rey showed up, having cut himself off from the Force and all that, he wouldn't have sensed it. But even if he did visually see the destruction, which I think would be possible from his location in the galaxy compared to where Hosnian Prime was, I mean, if you can see it on Takodana, surely you could see it from Ahch-To as well. But if he did see it, I don't think it would have changed his mind in any way. I don't think he would have reacted much to it. I'm sure he would have been sad for the people that died, but I don't think he would have decided, okay, it is time for the Jedi to re-enter the fight or anything. I think he would have stuck with his convictions. Aaron Owania asks if there is a name for the conflict in the sequel trilogy yet. Not that I know of. Wikipedia has been calling it the First Order Resistance War. I've just been referring to it as the First Order Conflict. I mean, the name Galactic Civil War didn't come about until well after the original trilogy finished, and of course, the Clone Wars was kind of a special case because it was already named in the original trilogy. I do think we will get a name for this historic event in Star Wars, but not until after Episode 9 is done. Roberto Moreno wants to know if I think Alden Ehrenreich or Donald Glover could appear as Han and Lando in Jon Favreau's live-action series that's coming up. I really doubt it. I think that those actors will represent those characters at that specific point in time. I think that the 10-year or so gap between Solo and A New Hope allows for a little visual wiggle room, and I was okay with the recast because, I mean, yeah, he's 10 years younger. It's okay that he looks a little bit different, but I think it would be a little more jarring to have him step into Han Solo's shoes later in life, especially in between the original and sequel trilogies. So I doubt that it would happen. I wouldn't say it's impossible to happen, I just don't think it will. Once-A-Man asks what anthology stories I would like to see down the line. I get this question a lot, and honestly, I never really have any solid ideas, but part of the reason is that I try not to worry about what movies are coming up. Like I talked about this past Sunday, I think people can get a little too wrapped up in what they want, and they build up these expectations for what should be next that are then never met. And when I think about like the books or the comics, I'm not worried about what books and comics are going to come next. I just let the announcements come, and some stories I'm like, that really excites me, and some I'm like, that just sounds okay. And I try to treat the movies the same way. I know they are a little different because they're like the big events every year, but I just try to keep that same philosophy because all I really want from Star Wars movies and all stories down the line is to continue exploring fun and new ideas within that universe. I mean, when they first announced the Han Solo movie, I was like, okay, I mean, that doesn't really excite me. But then when they say it's a Western heist adventure film starring Han Solo, that is more compelling to me. So it can be kind of hard to judge these ideas when you just hear Han Solo movie or Boba Fett movie, when I'm sure there's more to it than that. It's hard to judge some of these ideas until you hear the actual story set up behind them. But the way that I like to enjoy fandom, and this is just what works for me, but I don't really want to stress about what's coming. I just want to relax and enjoy the ride. And if I ever stop enjoying the ride, I'll get off. But so far, that hasn't happened to me. That's it for patron questions. If you're a patron and you didn't see your question answered here, just head over to Patreon where I left you a written response. If you're not a patron, you can learn more by following the link in the description. Just $1 a month will get you access to extra Star Wars Explained content like audio commentaries for the films, or roles in my Discord server, and the combined donations really go a long way in supporting the channel. On to YouTube questions. Luke Skywalker II asks if I hope we see Ahch-To or the original Jedi explored in future content. Yes, absolutely. I have always been intrigued by that kind of really ancient history lore, and I think that is absolutely a story worth telling. I also think from what we've seen so far about the original Jedi, the story we'll get is going to be wildly different from what we were told in Star Wars Legends. So yes, I would love to see that explored again. Stir wants to know what familiar faces I think might show up in Jon Favreau's live-action series. It's hard to say until we actually get some story details about it, but I'm hoping that it's fairly separate from the Skywalker saga and what we know so far. Like I mentioned earlier, I just want it to be kind of a new thing. That said, I also think that it's very possible we could see like Mon Mothma show up, because it'll be the earliest days of the New Republic. Even if she just showed up in like HoloNet news holograms, I think that makes perfect sense. And Chewbacca seems to pop up in a lot of various stories. That seems to be a character that's always pretty easy to get in there somehow. So I do think that it's possible, but I'm kind of hoping that it sticks to just being its own thing with its own new characters for the most part. Nelkirson von Balgroof asks why Proset Dibbs wasn't the Grand Inquisitor instead of just the 10th brother, because he was a Jedi Master before his fall. I think that the boring answer is that his character wasn't developed until after Star Wars Rebels, but I'll try to get an in-universe answer in there. Dibbs was disillusioned with the Jedi, but I don't think he was fully on the dark side. From what we know of the Grand Inquisitor, he seemed to be just really angry at the Jedi, so maybe it was a little easier for Palpatine to convert him to the dark side faster. Maybe he was just a little bit more zealous about ending the Jedi, and Proset Dibbs took a little more work. Maybe he was so lowly ranked. I don't really know if the 10th brother is a low rank. We still don't really know how all that Inquisitor ranking works, but maybe he just wasn't quite as trusted because he was sort of in a not fully dark side, but also not with the Jedi kind of attitude. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, the real answer is that his character just wasn't developed until after the Grand Inquisitor was created. Speaking of the Inquisitors, Evan Kearney wants to know how they survived Order 66. If they were all fallen Jedi, shouldn't they have been killed along with their peers? That's a great question, and I don't really know the answer, but my guess would be that Palpatine just shot him a little text real quick and said, get out of the temple. Like, there was probably some sort of safe place for them to all get to, and Palpatine just gave them a little heads up so they could get out of Dodge. Michael Kakula asks if I think all 3 films in the sequel trilogy should have been written before Episode 7 began. Yes, I do think that. Not necessarily written to completion, but at least get an outline with all of the major beats of all 3 films. Let's get a really solid plan going in. Now, the other side of that argument is that the original trilogy was created without a plan. It was pretty much made up as it went along. And that's proof that this type of storytelling can work. But I also think that movie making has changed in the past 40 years. We're living in a post-Marvel world where every movie studio wants every movie to spawn a franchise or a shared universe or something. So I think audiences expect different things from their movies now, and they expect these things to be planned out. So yeah, I am on the side of the sequel trilogy should have been more thoroughly planned out from the get-go. I mean, I loved The Force Awakens, and I liked The Last Jedi well enough, but I would totally agree that there's a disconnect between the 2 movies, and I think that could have been solved with a better plan. Now, that said, I think that Lucasfilm has changed their strategy going forward. We know that we're getting a Johnson trilogy where he is going to be the creative lead on that. It will have kind of one unified voice and direction. Same with the Benioff Weiss series. Like, they're going to be the creative leads on that project. So I think that things have changed going forward, and I think for the better. And then that said, it's still just a movie franchise. Like, it's a shame that the sequel trilogy had to be kind of a testing ground for this new era of Star Wars, but worst case scenario is that I just don't like the sequel trilogy as much as the other trilogies, and I don't watch them as often. It's not the end of the world. That's all the time I have for questions today. Next week's Q&A is going to work a little bit differently with the release of Solo because I want the Q&A to be kind of Solo-centric. So what I'm going to do is Thursday night make a post on Patreon and make a YouTube community post where I will ask you guys to ask your questions. So save your questions until then. Also, 2 weeks from today, I will be out in LA competing in the live Star Wars movie trivia schmodown against Ken Knapsack and Joseph Scrimshaw. If you're in the area, I have a link to get tickets below. You can show up and you can support me as I try to win again. And finally, I need to announce the winner of last week's giveaway. That was Robert Harris. Congratulations, Robert. You won the book, The Rebel Files. I already emailed you to get your shipping information, so as soon as I get that, I can have it sent out to you. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.